Welcome into the Skinny Podcast. It's the weekly Potpourri edition. I'm Richard Skinner, Local12.com, digital sports columnist and editor with Rick Broering. As always, it's presented by Blake, the attorney Mays, and we're talking about sports topics of local interest. We've got a gambling segment to get to, and my favorite portion of the podcast, you can ask me a question on any topic. Just go to the Twitterverse, the Xverse, hit up the hashtag AskSkinnyAnything. I was flipping around my television dial last night, kind of bored because there wasn't much on, and lo and behold, who pops up on my TV screen? Rick Broering, the host of the Darren Horn Show. I'm watching on Bally Sports Ohio. You did a fine job. I didn't know you were doing that already.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Last night was the first episode that aired, first one we recorded. So there'll be another one coming out in a couple of weeks, and we'll go all season long, giving people some insight into the program. Hopefully, we'll do some cool stuff as it goes on.
All right, Bally Sports Ohio is the place.
Yeah, appreciate you shouting that out. But let's start off with some Bengals conversations. This is actually an info or action-packed week for the podcast, really, in Cincinnati sports. There's a lot going on to talk about. And we'll start with the Bengals because it's a disaster right now. They're 0-3 after the loss to the Commanders on Monday night, 38-33. They'll go to Carolina this Sunday at 1 o'clock to try to get back on the winning side of things. Skinny, the defensive performance was pathetic. You have talked about that with Trags, and everybody else has talked about it locally. My question for you is, can they fix this, or is there something fundamentally wrong with the personnel or the coaching, the philosophy that they're using on defense? Because I understand that there have been injuries. I know that Sheldon Rankins is out, BJ Hill's out. They don't have Miles Murphy for whatever that's worth, but it feels like there might be more than just that going on here with the defense.
Yeah, I think it is. I want to say it's as simple as the injuries, but I want to get to another portion of this layer as well. I mean, let's face it, the two guys they started at defensive tackle on Monday night, Jay Tufele and Zach Carter, if everybody is healthy, they're not even active on game day. I mean, they're literally not. The four defensive tackles would be the two rookies, Chris Jenkins and McKinley Jackson, and then the other two guys who are hurt, BJ Hill and Sheldon Rankins. I talked to Sam Hubbard yesterday. Sam Hubbard graded the worst of any defensive lineman, 239 out of 239 in the NFL this past Monday night. And I went to Sam yesterday, and Ben Baby from ESPN was there, and Fox 19, I think, came at the very end. And I just said, hey, man, are you playing hurt? Are you hurt? And he said, I don't want to talk about injuries. I've got to be better, blah, blah, blah. Well, lo and behold, Ben actually reported later in the night that he's recovering from a grade 3 hamstring injury, which is the highest grade you can have, that he suffered in training camp. And I can confirm that did happen, the hamstring injury itself, because Lou Anarumo told us yesterday that he was dealing with a hamstring issue. Now, people could say, why run him out there? Well, did anybody see Joseph Osai play? And so that gets to the next problem of they've just done such a poor job drafting that there's just no depth. You know, Zach Carter was a 3rd-round pick. Those guys should be contributing. Joseph Osai was a 3rd-round pick. That guy should be contributing. You mentioned Miles Murphy. I think you'll see a lot of Miles Murphy when he comes back, but he's not here now because he's not healthy. And I think that's literally where it started. Jaden Daniels, had a lot of quick passes, but the times he had to drop back and stand in the pocket, he had all day to survey the field. They got no rush on him because you got a hobbled guy in Hendrickson, a guy who can't play worth a damn in Joseph Osai, and then 2 rum-dums playing tackle. I think that's as simple as that. I really believe that. I'm not looking to make it an excuse, but I think it's just that simple.
Is Hendrickson banged up too, or did you mean to say Hubbard there?
No, a little bit. He was listed as an illness yesterday, but I saw him come off the field a handful of times, messing with his foot, talking to the training staff. But he was not listed as such. He was listed yesterday as having an illness why he didn't practice. But I thought he had a good game, but teams right now are double and triple teaming him because they realize we can block one-on-one against these other clowns.
Sure. Or if nothing else, I mean, with Jaden Daniels, he just rolled the pocket out to the other side, get away from him as much as he wanted to. Right. I mean, Trags made a great point in your podcast, I thought, right after the game, which was that the Bengals set no edge with their defense. Jaden Daniels was just running sideline to sideline as much as he wanted, moving the pocket wherever he wanted. We can say that Lou Anarumo was absolutely horrible in that game, and he was. That's a fact. I mean, there's definitely personnel things going on. There's definitely injuries going on, but there's bottom line is when you're playing a rookie quarterback and he looks that good, you did not come up with a good enough defensive game plan. And that's on Lou Anarumo. And I also think it's worth noting that he has some shortcomings as a coordinator. We've talked about them over the course of the year. I mean, we've already talked about the lack of run defense, which that's partly on personnel and I think partly on him. We've previously talked in years past about he's really into the philosophy of give up a lot of yards, but we're not going to give up points. It's bend but don't break type philosophy. And that has come back to bite them at different times. But I'll also say with some fans, it's always about the coaching staff. It's
Sure.
like anything goes wrong, it's like the coach has to be fired immediately. I'm from this weird place where I can acknowledge that that wasn't good enough, but I also think Lou Anarumo has done plenty of really good things, and I don't know that it's time to be like, Lou Anarumo's done. He can't coach anymore. You got to get him out of here. What would be your take on all of the fan conversation about Lou Anarumo?
Yeah, I mean, that's always where fans go. It's the easiest place to go because fans are smarter than coaches. But and listen, some of the criticism is warranted. The one thing I think people wanted him to do more was blitz, and I asked him that question yesterday. I said, "Do you regret not blitzing more?" And I said, and I say that fully recognizing you didn't get in many blitz situations. I mean, they were 2nd and 4, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1. You didn't have a lot of 3rd and 7s, 3rd and 8s in that game. And so there's not a lot of blitzes that you can call. And he kind of acknowledged, yeah, maybe I could have, but again, we just never really got in great positions to blitz. I think he was also fearful of the first 2 games, Jaden Daniels, they ran a lot of quick screen game. And so your fear is if I send a blitz and he runs that quick screen game, one missed tackle turns, a 5-yard gain into a 60-yard touchdown. I get that fear. He blitzed at the end of the game. People complained that he ran the 0 blitz late in the game, trying to knock them out of field goal range, and he throws a touchdown pass to Terry McLaurin. And so you're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah, no, I mean, to me, that was what I wanted to see more of. Now, granted, that was a situation that called for it, but like that was a great play by the Bengals, great play call by the Bengals. Jaden Daniels just made an unbelievable play, and McLaurin made a great catch too. That's just fantastic football. And at that point, you have to tip your cap. And that's why part of me, it's weird because coming out of that game, I mean, watching it that night, it felt disastrous. It felt as bad as any game I've ever watched as a Bengals fan. Afterwards, I'm miserable. But then like the next day, as I'm listening to more and more people talk, I go back, I keep thinking like, man, Jaden Daniels looked really freaking good. And I know that's on the Bengals partially, but that was also a fantastic performance by him. I think this Washington team overall is probably better than people really thought going into the season. And so there's part of me that feels like that really wasn't as bad of a loss as it felt. This team is going to be okay. The real issue is they lost to the crappy team they played the first week against the Patriots. They should have never lost that game, and then this wouldn't feel as disastrous as it feels right now. But then there's this other part of me, Skinny, that feels like this is a total disaster that is just starting to unravel, and we're in for the worst of it ahead. How should I feel? Which is right?
No, I think it's a fair way to feel. And I even said that after the New England game, that you giving yourself no more margin for error to slip up in a winnable game. Not just a winnable game, a game you should have won. You're a touchdown favorite at home. That is a game you should win in the NFL. I'm with you. I fully acknowledge Jaden Daniels is really good. I mean, I think he's going to be maybe the best of this rookie quarterback class. I know everybody's been touting Caleb Williams, but Jaden Daniels, I mean, he looks like a veteran playing out there, poised. He obviously has the skill with his feet to extend plays, to have some design runs for him, and he's just really accurate with the football. He hadn't really let it rip the first 2 games. Well, we saw him rip it twice in this game, and he ripped it pretty well down the field when he did. So yeah, I tip my cap to him as well. But again, I go back to the disaster is you just are so thin from a depth perspective. I'll go back to, Von Bell looks like a 30-plus-year-old safety right now, right? He just does. I value Von Bell. They value Von Bell because of what he can do to get guys in the right place. But he just looks like a guy who's lost a step because Father Time's gotten him. And in the world that we should have lived with, that we live in, you should have a ready-made replacement. That player should be Jordan Battle. He can't get on the field. It goes back to, was that a wasted draft pick? And you can go to almost every spot. DJ Turner's a second-round pick as a corner. He can't get on the field. Arguably, I guess you like what Dax Hill and Cam Taylor-Britt have done through the first 3 games, but you would think that kid could get in some nickel situations if possible, and he can't get on the field. So what have you done with your drafts? You've messed them up badly.
Yeah, the draft issue is a real concern. And when you start talking about the depth situation, Skinny, that's what leads me more to, and you brought this up on the recap podcast with Trags, are we just getting to a situation where money has changed everything, right?
Yes.
Guys are needing their money. Joe Burrow got his, other guys haven't got theirs yet. That's starting to cause some rifts, whether it's not personal between them, but it's just the nature of doing business. Like, sure, you got yours, I haven't got mine yet. I'm gonna do me. And by the way, the offense
Trey Hendrickson wants more.
Yeah, good point. But we're talking about the stuff with like T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. It's like, by the way, the offense is great. The offense looks fine. They were plenty good enough to win Monday night. So I don't even know how much of an issue that stuff is. But I do think just trying to pay guys, trying to get guys while they're on rookie deals and keep this team young and together, it's not easy anymore. It's all of a sudden hard. You had to redraft to fill some of those spots. They didn't do it well enough. And this is a situation you find yourself in. And that's why I start when I think about that, that's where I start leaning more towards this is a disaster that's starting to unravel.
I mean, I think really good rosters have 3 to 5 stars that you pay: an edge rusher, a corner, a left tackle, a quarterback, and probably a receiver. You're being asked in this marketplace you're being asked to pay what amounts to maybe the top paid wide receiver, top paid quarterback. I know fans want Jamar paid, but to me, some of that's a recipe for disaster if you don't draft well, because when you're paying that kind of money, and I think Jamar deserves close to top of the market. I've never said he doesn't. I just don't know if he deserves top of the market, very top of the market. But when you are going to pay those type of guys, and you're paying a left tackle in Orlando Brown, and you're paying an edge rusher in Trey Hendrickson, you're going to have some guys on rookie contracts performing well, and they just don't have enough of them.
Where do you find yourself leaning more towards? I sort of threw out the two scenarios, one being that, like, hey, it's a loss where a guy played out of his mind. Your offense was fantastic. If you get one stop on defense, you win. Right. This team is clearly trending in the right direction over the last 2 weeks. They're going to be fine over the long haul. Or is it closer to being, this is a disaster and it's going to get bad?
No, I listen, a win cures everything. If you go to Carolina and win, which you should, I think it quells the noise. It probably quells their lack of confidence. Maybe they don't sound unconfident when I've talked to some guys. They sound pretty confident in themselves still. And they've dug out of these holes before. Zach made a point yesterday in the press conference. I know he's trying to probably pump himself up a little bit, but last year after that loss to Tennessee, remember they were sitting at 1-3. And then all of a sudden went on a 4-game winning streak when Burrow got healthy. Well, you went in Carolina, you're 1-3. I don't think you're going to get either BJ or Sheldon back this week, but maybe get one of them back next week for the Baltimore game. You win that game at home and you kind of take a deep breath, and it wasn't the month that you wanted, the 3-1 going into the Baltimore game, but you're probably not too far out of it in that division. I mean, Baltimore's already lost 2 games. You got a chance to hand them their 3rd loss if you beat them in a couple of weeks. And so suddenly it doesn't feel quite so far away. But I will tell you this, to your other point of this, you go to Carolina and lose, then yes, all bets are off. I think at that point, you're going to see guys start making business decisions. Yeah. I think you're going to see some guys just check out. And that's the recipe for disaster.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. I mean, if they do lose to Carolina, actually, let me ask you something else, because you mentioned this on the recap podcast, and I haven't heard anyone else say anything about this. You mentioned that Joe Burrow's health is now a week-to-week deal for this team. Is there a backstory to that? Are there issues with Joe Burrow, or is it just more of a concern that maybe something will pop up?
Yeah, something will pop up. I mean, and I was talking to somebody yesterday about this. That feels like kind of how seasons just go awry, right? Where you mess up early, you lose games you should win, you're sitting at 2-4, and then comes the massive injury, right? And that's to me is that's the week-to-week thing I'm talking about. You're still a Joe Burrow major injury away from going. And listen, I love what Jake Browning did last year, but that becomes Katie bar the door at that point.
So on that note, if let's say they lose this next game, does Joe Burrow look around at some point and say, you know what, I did just come off the surgery. Is it worth me risking the rest of this year? I can't imagine he does.
Not him. No, I don't. I honestly don't.
But Jamar, that's a different story, I feel like.
Trey, the same. I think it's a different story.
Hendrickson?
Yeah.
And what about T?
T has to play well to get paid. Yeah, he's got to play well to get paid. He's got to prove he's healthy, and he's got to put up numbers. I thought Monday was at least a nice easing back step into it for him, but 3 for 39 yards probably isn't going to get you paid on the open market. You need to have a couple of big games along the way when he gets opportunities. I mean, I think you weren't going to put him into a ton of situations the other night. You got some man-to-man coverage on Jamar. You took advantage of that. I think that's the one thing having T back helped with, is getting Jamar freed up a little bit. And then there's going to be games where T's going to get freed up a little bit. And I don't see him doing that at all, because he has to perform well. He has to prove to teams he's healthy, or he's not getting paid what he thinks he should get paid.
Yeah, I think it's the health thing is bigger than anything for him. It's like he's put enough on film that he would still get his money. The problem is the knock against him is that he's not durable. So if he sits out this year under the guise of he's a little banged up, that's not going to help his value at all.
And that's where that narrative of him, nursing the hamstring injury and is it real? He spilled his guts out a few days before he came back about that. And I think he was very hurt by people believing that that's what he was doing, because again, he needs to play well and show that he is healthy. And he simply wasn't.
He needs to show that he's healthy, but to the first point, he does need to play well. So him coming back, if he's not 100% and playing poorly, is going to hurt him as well. And that's where I think people rightfully thought, hey, he's not 100% and he's going to wait until he absolutely is 100% or better.
I have no problem with it
before he gets on the field. And that's fine. He's welcome to do that, but he also shouldn't get upset about people acknowledging that, because that's the nature of the business at this point. Joe Burrow and Zach Taylor had their private meeting before they went into the actual locker room after the game, and a lot's been made out of that. Burrow now says he's going to be he's going to pick his spots to be a more vocal leader for the team. What have you made out of that whole aftermath? Because I find what he's saying rather uninteresting.
Yeah, I do too.
The fact that it's happening and the look of it, it's like, it feels like there's more to that.
I would guess. I mean, again, you can believe what you want. Zach says they've done it multiple times before after games. He just says he went through a wrong door. Again, believe what you want to believe and all that. The bottom line to this to me is that's probably his quarterback venting some frustration. That's a guy that just, I mean, Rick, I got out of coaching for a small period of time because I came to the point of I hated losing more than I enjoyed winning. I think I've met a kindred spirit in that guy because he literally hates everything about losing. And I think that was just a frustration moment for him. Yeah, I don't know how much more of a leader he needs to be. I think he already is a leader. I think he is vocal at times. I mean, I made a point to a couple people, and I'll make it here on the podcast. I mean, I'm sure he's already vocal with the offensive guys. I'm sure on the sidelines he's talking to those guys and giving them the kick in the ass when they need, and probably patting them on the back when they need it. But here's the thing. I don't need him saying something to the defense, because then guess what happens, Rick? It becomes offense versus defense in that locker room. You don't need that at all. Maybe you need a leader on defense. I thought Von Bell was that guy, and I still think he is. But yeah, I don't know what this whole new leadership thing is all about. It sounds like a bunch of fluff and nonsense to me.
Yeah, like I'm completely uninterested in the idea of like Joe holding guys more accountable for running their routes properly, or telling a defender they need to be in better position. That does nothing for me. I am wondering, though, you had the Cam Taylor-Britt comments about the college offense that they were going to go up against Washington. You've had Jamar talking about we're still the team to beat in the AFC North, those types of things. He did mention yesterday, or whenever you guys talked to him this week, that he's going, some bigger picture stuff is maybe where he could make his voice heard. It's not so much about going across and telling defensive guys what they should be doing, but maybe bigger picture stuff. I'm wondering if that's it more so, that he's like,
maybe
what are we doing? We're looking like clowns out here, and we're getting beat, and we've got guys like not in training camp and all types of things. Like, we're looking like a mess. And I have to imagine that upsets him as much as anything. And you know, Zach Taylor, he's starting to look like Marvin Lewis all over again with the whole like inmates running the asylum situation.
Yeah, it's close to that. I'll be honest with you. And you know, with Cam, he obviously made it a point after the Kansas City words about Xavier Worthy. I mean, he said, you know, we don't want to degrade the other team. And I'm sure he told him that in private as well. Well, then he does it again. And I think if I was Zach Taylor in that situation, I would almost treat this high school like, and go to Cam and say, my man, you pop off one more time, I'm simply going to bench your ass, and it's going to cost you money because you're closing in on your next contract. And you've played well enough to probably earn a very healthy contract. But if I bench you, that's not going to help you. So how about we just shut up and play?
Skinny, playing Andy Dalton on the road at 1 p.m. on a Sunday as his former team that's desperate, and you've got to find a way to win a game. That's not exactly the spot I'd be looking for if I were the Bengals.
Yeah, I mean, of all the people that maybe drive the stake into your heart, right? It'd be Andy Dalton of all people. I mean, the guy who was loathed for his talent level here in town and didn't get to do enough to get them over the hump in the playoffs, et cetera, et cetera. Yet here he still is playing, and I don't think he can play 17 games at a high level like he did last week against Las Vegas, but he still can play at a high enough level to be effective. And you know, if he's effective enough and he ends up beating this team, my word, what that, you talk about the ugliest way to get to that 0-4 mark with you know, so much still looming. That honestly, that feels like the stake in the heart.
I know I did the whole thing earlier about like fans are always focused on firing the coach when anything goes wrong. At what point does this become a real conversation about the coaching staff, whether it's Zach or firing Lou Anarumo or what have you? Like, if they get to 0-4, do you start talking about that legitimately, or is it way past that?
If it's another ugly defensive performance, it'd probably be a position coach. I don't think it would be Lou. I really don't. I think he's got way too much respect for Lou, but, and I I hope this isn't the case because I really like him. I mean, again, if the defensive line is poor again, as they were, and it's possible they are because they're playing with a bunch of backups and hacks who can't play at the moment. I mean, could a position coach like Marion Hobby, the defensive line coach, get it? Yeah, maybe. I don't know if that would be fair. I think Marion's a good coach, and I think guys really like him, but Joseph Osai hasn't developed. Zach Carter hasn't developed. Jury's still out on Miles Murphy. You got a couple of rookies. If you don't like the direction it's going in with some young guys you're trying to develop, do you go another route? It would have to be another ugly loss for that to happen. But I think something would have to be on the table. Yes.
I also wonder if let's say this team does turn it around and they're in the thick of it, whether they make the playoffs or not, they just end up having a around 500 season or better. Is there a certain point where you look at that as a franchise and say, and we keep putting out a team that's playoff caliber in terms of talent, and yet we start off slow at the beginning of every year and find ourselves in a hole? Is that coaching?
No, I go back to the poor drafting. I mean, you just have not drafted well enough. I mean, even go to the offensive side of things. You had to go to free agency to get your starting running back. You had to go to free agency to get your starting tight end. You had to go to free agency last year to get your left tackle. You had to go free agency the year before that to get your center and your right guard. The jury's still out on your left guard who you drafted, and he's kind of the focal point of fans' ire that they don't think Cordell Volson's good. I think he's just fine, mind you, but I get some of that. Jamar Chase, you didn't look. He fell into your lap. It was a choice between future Hall of Famer Jamar Chase, future Hall of Famer Penei Sewell. I don't think you went wrong either way. I think they got it right. Don't get me wrong. Jamar Chase was the right pick, but again, it wasn't like you were having to make a deep thought process to make that pick. Joe Burrow fell in your lap. T. Higgins fell in your lap at the top of the second round. I mean, so it's not like you've plucked guys. I'll give you Andre Yoshavash. Good for you. You look like you got a guy late. Same for Chase Brown. You look like you got a guy late, but for the most part, you've had to spend money at multiple positions because you haven't drafted well enough. So that goes not to the coaching staff. That goes up all the way upstairs to Duke Tobin. At what point does the finger get pointed at him and the scouting staff? In fact, I'm literally writing a column about that today.
Yeah, I think it probably already should, to your point. So I asked you last week before they played Washington, what was your confidence level out of 10 that they would win? And you said 9.9. So
that meant there was 0.0, there was 0.1 that it wasn't going to happen, Rick.
That's correct. You left a chance.
Yes.
You left a chance, and Jaden Daniels slid right through that crack. What about Carolina here? Staring down 0-4 potentially. What do you think?
I'm going 9.9 again.
Yeah.
Listen, Carolina, God love them. They made the change at quarterback. Andy played great, but you also beat a team in Las Vegas in which the coach after the game came out talking about his players. He said, we have people making business decisions. So obviously they got some stuff going on in Las Vegas, right? Yeah. And people sounds like plural to me. I mean, I think people have pointed at Devontae Adams. I don't know who all he was talking about, but he said people. He didn't say a person. People sounds like multiple. And so was that the perfect storm for Carolina that you made the quarterback change? He got hot in the game. You honestly played. Vegas is terrible. And again, if guys are making business decisions in that game, that's already a problem. I don't think Carolina is worth a damn, to be honest with you. And they're without one of their weapons in Adam Thielen.
Any notes or topics that you wanted to address with the Bengals?
No, I'm really looking forward to seeing Amarius Mims. I thought he did some good things on Monday night. I talked to him a little bit yesterday. He was disappointed he gave up a sack. I never think of these things. Zach brought it up in the press conference of, he only gets bits and pieces of the game plan in practice because he doesn't rep with the first team. Trent Brown was. So, you throw that kid in the fire in his debut game, and he knows enough to get by, but probably everything, not everything. And, made probably a technique mistake and got beat. But I'm really looking forward to see. I mean, there was a play, I can't remember his number 11. It was a linebacker on a running play. It was really actually one of his first snaps that he was in there. It was so noticeable. I mean, he rode great. He took this kid like 10 yards down the field. I don't know if you remember the play I'm talking about. I don't know if they showed it on TV. Yep. It was incredible to watch. So, yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to seeing him. I mean, I think we all knew this was coming at some point. I'm sorry for Trent Brown. He's an injury-prone guy who ends up suffering probably what is going to be a career-ending injury. But I think this was going to eventually be the case, even if Trent Brown was healthy, that Amarius Mims was going to start, and now here he is.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that too. And like you said, I mean, you see that one rep, and you're like, oh no, he looks horrible. And then the rest of the game, I thought he looked pretty good. There's some actually really positive moments from him. So.
Especially, I mean, in those later drives where basically the Bengals had to pass to get back into it.
Rush.
Right. And I thought he did fine.
Yeah.
You can always get local stories right here on YouTube, but go ahead and hit that subscribe button to get notifications to stay in the know.